The massive alien ship appeared above Earth without warning. It was bigger than anything humans had ever built, gleaming silver in the sunlight and covered with strange markings that seemed to glow. People around the world stopped what they were doing and stared at their screens in wonder and fear. After centuries of wondering if they were alone in the universe, humanity finally had their answer. Commander Velrax stood on the bridge of his ship, looking down at the blue planet below. He was tall and thin, with pale skin that looked almost transparent. His species had evolved on a world with low gravity and perfect weather, where nothing ever went wrong and life was easy. He had been traveling through space for 20 years, finding new worlds, and bringing them into the Galactic Council. This was just another job to him. His science officer handed him a report about Earth. Velrax read it and made a sound of disgust. The planet was horrible. The gravity was twice what most species considered normal. The atmosphere was filled with oxygen, a dangerous gas that caused fires and rusted metal. The oceans were salty enough to kill most living things. Temperatures swung wildly from freezing to boiling. Huge storms covered entire continents. And worst of all, the planet was full of predators that killed and ate each other every day. The report classified Earth as a death world, one of the most dangerous planets in the known galaxy. Velrax could not understand how intelligent life could survive there. These humans must be very primitive and very lucky, he thought. They would need the Council's help to become civilized. Captain Jake Morrison received the call while having coffee in his quarters aboard the UEN Defiance. The ship was patrolling near Mars, watching for asteroids that might threaten Earth. Jake was 42 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars and seen things he wished he could forget. When his communication officer told him about the alien ship, Jake felt his heart start racing. He had always believed aliens existed somewhere, but he never expected to meet them. The aliens invited Jake to come aboard their ship for a meeting. Jake agreed, though he made sure to bring 6 armed soldiers with him. His shuttle docked with the alien vessel, and he walked into a meeting room that was beautiful and strange. The walls seemed to glow with soft light, and the air smelled like flowers he had never encountered before. Velrax was waiting with several other aliens. Through a translation device, he began to speak. His words were polite at first, welcoming humanity to the greater galaxy. Jake listened carefully, waiting for the real message. It came quickly. The Galactic Council had decided that humanity would become part of their civilization. This was supposed to be an honor. But as Velrax continued talking, Jake realized what it really meant. Humans would have to give up all their weapons and military ships. They would have to move off most of Earth's surface into special zones where the Council could watch them. They would have to follow Council laws and do whatever work the Council assigned them. And they would have to limit how many children they could have, because the Council thought humans were too aggressive, and there were too many of them already. In exchange for giving up everything, humans would receive protection and technology. Velrax said this like he was offering a wonderful gift. He seemed to genuinely believe he was helping these poor, primitive creatures. Jake felt anger burning in his chest, but he kept his face calm. He had negotiated with terrorists and dictators before. He knew how to hide his feelings. He asked Velrax to clarify what would happen if humans refused these terms. Velrax looked surprised by the question. Refuse? Why would anyone refuse? He explained patiently that the Council had superior weapons and technology. They had thousands of ships and controlled hundreds of worlds. Resistance was pointless. Humanity would comply with the Council's generous offer, or they would be forced to comply. It was that simple. Humans had 7 days to begin surrendering their weapons and accepting Council authority. Jake stood up slowly. He was shorter than Velrax, but in the light gravity the aliens preferred, he moved with a strength and grace that made the alien take a step back. Jake looked Velrax directly in the eyes and spoke in a clear, cold voice. Humanity rejected the Council's demands completely. Earth was a free world and humans would remain free. They would not surrender their weapons, their homes, or their rights. The aliens had 7 days to leave the solar system and never come back. If they tried to force humans to obey, they would discover that Earth's children knew how to fight. Velrax made a sound that the translator said was laughter. He told Jake that humans had no weapons that could hurt Council ships. Their technology was centuries behind. They had never even traveled faster than light. This rebellion would last perhaps a few hours before humans realized how hopeless it was and surrendered. The Council had done this 40 times before with other primitive species. It always ended the same way. Jake smiled, but there was no warmth in it. He told Velrax that the alien had made a serious mistake. Earth might be a death world, but that just meant humans were survivors. They had evolved fighting predators bigger and stronger than them. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed them. They had learned to thrive in conditions that would kill any Council species in minutes. And now Velrax had just threatened their home and their freedom. Jake and his soldiers left the alien ship and returned to the Defiance. As soon as they were back aboard, Jake sent an urgent message to Earth Command. War was coming. Humanity needed to prepare. On Earth, President Linda Hayes called an emergency meeting of every nation's leaders. She had been a fighter pilot before becoming a diplomat, and then president. She understood both war and peace. She explained what the aliens had demanded and what would happen if humanity refused. The debate was short. Every nation agreed. Humanity would not surrender. They would not become slaves on their own planet. They would not give up the freedom their ancestors had fought and died for across thousands of years. If the Galactic Council wanted Earth, they would have to take it by force. General Marcus Webb began organizing Earth's defenses. He was a career soldier with 40 years of experience. He studied the data Jake had gathered about the alien ships and weapons. The aliens had better technology, faster ships, and more powerful weapons. But Webb noticed something important. Their weapons were designed to disable enemy ships without destroying them, because the Council preferred to capture rather than kill. Their ships were fast but fragile, built for comfort rather than combat. And their tactics assumed enemies would surrender when faced with superior force. The aliens had not fought a real war in thousands of years. They had forgotten what war truly meant. Humans had never forgotten. On Earth, war was something every generation experienced. Every culture had warrior traditions and combat training. Humans knew how to fight when outnumbered, how to survive when wounded, and how to win when losing seemed certain. Dr. Helen Price, Earth's top weapons scientist, began working on new missiles and guns designed specifically to fight alien ships. If the aliens had shields that blocked energy weapons, humans would use solid metal slugs fired at incredible speeds. If aliens expected civilized warfare with rules, humans would give them brutal efficiency instead. 6 days passed. Around the world, humans watched the sky and waited. Factories that had made cars and computers switched to making weapons and armor. Soldiers who had retired were called back to service. Civilians volunteered to help in any way they could. Humanity was outnumbered and outgunned, but they were united in a way they had never been before. On the 7th day, Commander Velrax returned with 30 warships. He expected to find humans ready to surrender. Instead, he found a species ready for war. Admiral Karen Stone commanded Earth's defense fleet from orbit. When Velrax appeared on her screen demanding surrender, she gave him one last warning. Leave now or die here. Velrax ordered his fleet to attack. He truly believed this would be quick and easy. The human ships were small and primitive looking. They could not possibly stand against Council technology. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. The children of Earth were done talking. Now they would show the galaxy what happened when you threatened a species that had survived on a death world for millions of years. The Galactic Council had started this war with arrogance and threats. Humanity would finish it with blood and steel. News of the battle reached every corner of the galaxy within days. The Galactic Council tried to control the information, but traders and merchants spread the story anyway. For the first time in thousands of years, someone had bloodied the Council's nose. Some species celebrated quietly. Others watched nervously, wondering if they would be punished for showing interest. A few began to dream of freedom. On Centralis, the Council's capital world, the ruling members gathered in their massive chamber. High Arbiter Zenith floated at the center, his crystalline body glowing with agitation. Around him, representatives of 47 species argued and shouted. Some wanted immediate revenge. Others counseled caution. All of them were afraid. though none would admit it. The Council had built their power on one simple principle: they were unstoppable. Superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and thousands of years of experience meant that resistance was futile. But now the humans had proven that wrong. If one species could resist, others might try. The entire system could collapse. The Council made their decision. They would assemble the largest fleet in their history and crush humanity completely. 300 ships from a dozen different species would converge on Earth's solar system. This time there would be no mercy, no offers of peace. The humans would be made an example that would last for 10,000 years. But assembling that fleet would take time. Ships had to be pulled from patrol routes across the galaxy. Crews had to be trained. Supplies had to be gathered. It would take at least 30 days, maybe more. The Council thought they had time. They thought humanity would wait at Earth, licking their wounds and preparing defenses. They were wrong. Humans did not wait for the enemy to come to them. They attacked first. Commander Nick Perry stood in a briefing room on Earth addressing 40 volunteers. He was 39 years old, stocky and muscular, with a face that had seen too many wars. He had spent 10 years training Special Forces soldiers in underwater combat, jungle warfare, and urban fighting. Now he was taking everything he knew about guerrilla warfare and applying it to space. The volunteers came from every military branch and a dozen countries. They were the best of the best, chosen for their skills and their willingness to do whatever necessary to protect Earth. Perry looked at each face, knowing that many of them would not come home. He explained the mission simply. They would take one of the new ships equipped with faster-than-light drive, travel deep into Council territory, and destroy as much as possible before escaping. They would hit supply depots, fuel stations, mining colonies, and communications relays, anything that would slow down the Council's war effort. The risks were enormous. If captured, they would be tortured for information and then executed. If their ship was destroyed, they would die in the cold darkness of space, light years from home. There would be no rescue, no second chances, and no glory, just silent sacrifice in the dark. Every volunteer accepted the mission without hesitation. They understood what Earth was facing. If humanity lost this war, everyone they loved would die or become slaves. Personal survival did not matter. Victory was all that counted. Captain Amy Clark would pilot their ship, the UEN Vengeance. She was 31, thin and intense, with short black hair and hands that never stopped moving. She had been a test pilot before the war. Someone who flew experimental aircraft that killed 3 out of every 10 pilots. She was brilliant, fearless, and possibly insane. Perry trusted her completely. The Vengeance left Earth 3 days later, slipping away quietly in the night. The faster-than-light drive was based on technology stolen from the aliens during the first battle. Human scientists had spent weeks tearing apart captured equipment, figuring out how it worked and building their own version. It was crude compared to the original, but it worked well enough. The journey to their first target took 2 days. The Vengeance emerged from faster-than-light travel near a supply depot orbiting a gas giant. The depot was huge, storing fuel and food for Council military ships. Intelligence suggested it was only lightly defended because it was so far from any combat zone that no one expected it to be attacked. Lieutenant Ben Shaw monitored the sensors. He was 25, a technical genius who could hack any system and fix any machine. He studied the depot's defenses and reported 2 patrol ships and maybe 50 security personnel inside the station itself. Nothing that could stop them if they moved fast. Perry gave the order. The Vengeance accelerated toward the depot at full speed. The patrol ships detected them and tried to respond, but they were too slow. Nuclear missiles destroyed both ships in seconds. Then Perry and his team went to work. Marines in armored suits launched from the Vengeance and flew toward the depot. They hit the station like a hammer, breaching through airlocks and sealed doors. The security forces inside were hired soldiers from a species that had not seen real combat in centuries. Most surrendered immediately. A few tried to fight and died quickly. Sergeant Lisa Brown led her squad through the depot's main storage area. She was 27, originally from Texas, and had joined the Marines to escape poverty. Now she was fighting aliens on the other side of the galaxy. Life was strange. Her squad moved with practiced efficiency, planting explosive charges on fuel tanks, food synthesizers, and equipment storage bays. They had 20 minutes before Council reinforcements could arrive. Perry had drilled them endlessly on speed and precision. Every movement was planned, every action rehearsed. The team worked like a machine, devastating the depot section by section. A group of alien technicians huddled in one corridor, too afraid to run. Lisa held her rifle on them while her squadmate, Private Danny White, secured them in a storage room. Danny was 19, fresh from basic training, and this was his first real combat mission. His hand shook slightly as he closed the door. Lisa put a hand on his shoulder and told him he was doing fine. They were not here to kill civilians. But they were not here to make friends either. The aliens would be locked up until after the Vengeance left. By then, the depot would be destroyed and the human team would be gone. Perry gave the signal. Everyone evacuated back to the ship. The Vengeance pulled away, gaining distance. When they were clear, Perry triggered the charges. The depot exploded in a chain reaction that consumed the entire structure. Fuel ignited, sending fireballs across space. Food storage units vaporized. Equipment bays melted into slag. The explosion was so large it would be visible for days. It was the first of many such strikes. Over the next 2 weeks, human raiders hit 7 more targets spread across Council space. They struck without warning, destroyed everything of military value, and vanished before help could arrive. They used tactics no civilized species would consider: ambushes, hit-and-run attacks, and complete disregard for conventional rules of warfare. Other human teams launched similar missions. Captain Julia Martinez commanded the stealth ship Shadow, designed specifically for covert operations. Her ship was small, fast, and covered with technology meant to hide it from sensors. She specialized in hitting targets deep inside Council territory, where no one expected humans to reach. Julia was 35 with brown skin, sharp eyes, and a reputation for being lucky. She did not believe in luck. She believed in preparation, timing, and ruthless execution. Her team hit a mining colony that supplied rare metals for ship construction. They landed in the night, destroyed decades of mining equipment, and left before dawn. The colony would take years to rebuild. At every target, the humans left behind the same message. They broadcast it in local languages so everyone would understand. The message said that humanity fought for freedom, that the Council demanded slavery, and that every species had the right to choose their own path. They encouraged resistance, rebellion, and independence. The message spread. Client species who had served the Council for generations began to question their masters. If humans could resist, why could they not? Small acts of defiance began appearing across Council space. Workers slowed production. Ships developed mysterious mechanical problems. Computer systems suffered strange glitches. Nothing major, not yet, but the seeds of rebellion had been planted. Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Price worked day and night adapting alien technology. The faster-than-light drives were just the beginning. She and her team integrated Council sensors into human ships, giving them better detection ranges. They studied alien weapons and designed countermeasures. They even began building hybrid warships that combined the best of both technologies. The first of these new ships was the UEN Independence. Captain Chris Walker took her on her first combat mission, intercepting a Council patrol near a contested system. The Independence moved with impossible grace for her size, powered by Council technology but armored with human steel. She fought 6 alien ships and destroyed 5 of them in 30 minutes. The 6th fled, carrying news of humanity's new capabilities. President Linda Hayes watched the war develop from her command center beneath the ruins of the old United Nations building. She was exhausted, surviving on 4 hours of sleep per night and too much coffee, but she could not rest. Too much depended on the decisions she made. She met with diplomats from the few independent species in the galaxy, offering trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. Some accepted eagerly, seeing humanity as powerful allies. The alien fleet moved into position above Earth like a pack of sharks circling wounded prey. Commander Velrax felt confident as his 30 ships formed up in perfect lines. His weapons officer reported that all systems were ready. His shields were at maximum power. His engines hummed quietly, ready to move at his command. Everything was going according to plan. Admiral Karen Stone watched the aliens from her command ship Genesis. She was 55 years old and had spent her entire adult life in the military. Her hair was gray, her face was lined with scars from an old accident, and her eyes were hard as diamonds. She had seen war up close and knew what it cost. But she also knew that sometimes fighting was the only choice. Around her ship, 90 human vessels waited in defensive positions. They looked rough compared to the sleek alien ships, Human vessels were covered in thick armor plating, bristling with weapons and marked with scars from testing and training. They were ugly functional machines built for one purpose, to kill. Velrax opened communications one final time. He told Admiral Stone that this was her last chance to surrender. His ships could destroy the human fleet in minutes. His weapons were far more advanced. His shields could block anything humans threw at him. He did not want to kill anyone, but he would if necessary. Stone listened without expression. When Velrax finished talking, she leaned forward and spoke in a voice as cold as space itself. She told him that he had made a fatal mistake. He had assumed humans would fight like the Council, with rules and restraint. He had assumed wrong. Humans did not fight fair. Humans fought to win, no matter the cost. She cut the communication channel and gave the order. All human ships opened fire at once. The first shots were railgun slugs. Solid chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic fields. They crossed the distance in seconds. The alien shields, designed to stop energy beams and particle weapons, barely slowed them down. The slugs punched through the shields like they were not there and tore into the alien hulls. Velrax watched in shock as 3 of his ships took direct hits. The elegant vessels, never designed for real combat, crumpled under the impact. Their thin hulls tore open. Atmosphere vented into space. Alarms screamed throughout his fleet. His tactical officer was shouting reports about damage and casualties. This was impossible. The humans were supposed to be primitive. Then the missiles arrived. Hundreds of them launched from every human ship. They were not sophisticated weapons. They were simple rockets with nuclear warheads, the same kind of weapons humans had been building for 200 years. The alien point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but there were too many, coming from too many directions. The missiles reached the alien fleet and detonated. Nuclear fire bloomed in the darkness of space, each explosion bright enough to be seen from Earth's surface. The electromagnetic pulses scrambled alien sensors. The radiation cooked through their light armor. 5 more alien ships went dark, their systems burned out and their crews dying. Velrax screamed orders to return fire. His ships unleashed their disintegration beams, powerful energy weapons designed to tear apart enemy vessels at the molecular level. The beams struck 3 human destroyers dead on. The weapons were devastating, capable of destroying any Council ship in seconds. The human ships kept coming. Their outer armor layers melted and burned away. But underneath were more layers, and under those more still. Human ships were built with redundant armor, designed to survive in the harsh environment of space near Earth where radiation and micrometeorites were constant threats. What seemed like primitive technology was actually brutal effectiveness. Captain Lisa Grant commanded the destroyer Indomitable. Her ship was taking fire from an alien battleship. The beam weapon was cutting into her hull, burning through layer after layer of armor. Her damage control teams reported fires on 3 decks. Her forward guns were offline. She was losing air pressure in 2 sections. She did not retreat. She ordered her helmsman to accelerate directly toward the alien ship. Her crew looked at her like she was insane, but they obeyed. The Indomitable charged through the beam attack, her nose glowing red hot, but her engines pushing her forward at maximum acceleration. Lisa waited until she was close enough to see the alien ship's hull markings. Then she fired every weapon she had left. Point-blank range. No way to miss. Her railguns tore holes in the alien ship's sides. Her remaining missiles blew apart weapons arrays and engine pods. And then she gave the order she had hoped she would never give. She told her crew to evacuate to the life pods. She was going to ram. The crew hesitated for only a second. They had trained for this. They knew it might come to this. They ran to the escape pods while Lisa stayed at the helm, guiding her dying ship toward the alien battleship. The last crew member launched away just as the Indomitable struck home. Both ships crumpled from the impact. Metal screamed. Hulls tore open. The alien battleship, built for speed and elegance, broke in half. The Indomitable held together just long enough for Lisa to trigger the self-destruct. The explosion consumed what was left of both vessels, a funeral pyre bright enough to light up the battlefield. In the chaos of combat, fighter pilot Jake Cooper led his squadron against an alien cruiser. He was 28 years old and had been flying since he was 16. He loved the freedom of space combat, the 3-dimensional battlefield where skill mattered more than size. His squadron of 12 fighters moved like a school of fish, turning and diving in perfect coordination without needing orders. The alien point defense tried to track them, but the human pilots were too unpredictable. They did not fly in straight lines or follow standard attack patterns. They improvised, reacted, and trusted their instincts. Jake dove so close to the alien hull that his fighter's belly almost scraped the surface. At that range, he launched his missiles straight into an open hangar bay. The missiles flew into the cruiser's interior and detonated deep inside. The ship tore itself apart from within. Jake pulled up and away, his fighter riding the shockwave of the explosion. He whooped in triumph, then immediately looked for his next target. The battle raged for 6 brutal hours. Human ships, outnumbered and outgunned, fought with a ferocity that shocked the aliens. When their weapons ran out, they rammed. When their ships were crippled, they self-destructed near enemy vessels. When crews were venting atmosphere and dying from radiation, they kept fighting until their last breath. The aliens could not understand it. In council warfare, ships surrendered when damaged beyond repair. Crews evacuated when their vessels were doomed. Combat was supposed to be civilized with rules and limits. But humans had no limits. They fought like cornered animals, refusing to quit even when death was certain. Lieutenant Commander Paul Davis found himself on a destroyed ship with 30 surviving crew members. They were drifting in space, their vessel nothing more than a broken wreck. A damaged alien battleship floated nearby, its crew trying to make repairs. Paul looked at his people. They were wounded, low on oxygen, and had no hope of rescue until the battle was over. He gave them a choice. They could wait and hope to survive, or they could take the fight to the enemy one last time. Every single person chose to fight. They put on their armored suits, grabbed weapons from the emergency lockers, and used their suit thrusters to fly across the gap between ships. The aliens never saw them coming. Paul and his team found a hole in the battleship's hull and climbed inside. They moved through corridors fighting alien crew members who had never experienced close combat. The aliens were taller but weaker, fast but fragile. Human soldiers, trained in hand-to-hand combat and used to Earth's crushing gravity, moved through the ship like vengeful ghosts. Paul led his team to the engine room and planted nuclear charges throughout the space. The aliens finally realized what was happening and tried to stop them. A firefight erupted in the narrow corridors. Paul took 3 hits to his armor. 2 of his team went down, but they held their position until the charges were set. Paul tried to lead his remaining people back to safety, but there was no time. The aliens had sealed the exits. He could trigger the charges remotely and give the enemy time to evacuate, or he could stay and make sure the job was done. He looked at his team. They nodded. They understood. They had made their choice when they left their own ship. Paul triggered the charges. The battleship exploded in a flash that consumed him, his team, and 300 alien crew members. But the mission was complete. Another enemy ship destroyed. As the battle finally ended, the aliens realized they had won, but at a terrible cost. Of 30 ships, only 5 were still capable of fighting. 25 vessels had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Thousands of alien crew members were dead or dying. And for what? The humans had been defeated, but they had made the aliens pay for every meter of space with blood and wreckage. Commander Velrax was dead, his ship destroyed in the first minutes of combat. The surviving alien commander looked at the tactical display in horror. They had fought primitive species before. It was always the same. Show them superior technology, destroy a few ships, and they surrendered. But these humans had fought like demons. They had sacrificed themselves willingly, choosing death over surrender. Admiral Stone was still alive, her ship crippled but functional. She broadcast a message to T. The Council's invasion fleet arrived exactly 30 days after the first battle, just as Fleet Admiral Corvin had promised. 300 ships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the distant sunlight. It was the largest military force assembled in galactic history, representing the combined might of a dozen species. Corvin stood on the bridge of his super dreadnought, the eternal supremacy, and felt confident. The humans had been lucky once. They would not be lucky twice. Corvin was old by the standards of his species, nearly 200 years. He had commanded fleets in 3 conflicts over the past century, though calling them conflicts was generous. They had been more like police actions, putting down minor rebellions that collapsed after a single battle. He had studied the reports from the first engagement at Earth and concluded that Commander Velrax had simply been incompetent. The humans were primitive and lucky, nothing more. His second officer, Velrix, worked the sensor controls with nervous energy. Velrix was the sibling of the dead Commander Velrax, and he wanted revenge for his brother's death, but he was also afraid, though he would never admit it. He reported 90 human vessels scattered across the orbital zones around Earth, organized into defensive shells. Corvin studied the tactical display with satisfaction. The humans were using standard defensive doctrine, forcing the Council fleet to fight through layers of ships to reach the planet. It was textbook strategy for an inferior force. It would not work. His weapons could engage at ranges where human kinetic weapons were useless. He would destroy the human fleet ship by ship from a safe distance. What Corvin did not know was that half the contacts on his sensors were fake. Admiral Karen Stone had learned from the first battle. She knew the aliens had better sensors and longer-range weapons, so she gave them targets that were not really there. Remote-controlled drones, sensor decoys, and automated platforms designed to look like warships on alien scanners. The real human fleet was hiding in the asteroid belt, powered down and invisible. Stone watched from the command ship Marathon, hidden among thousands of rocks and ice chunks. Around her, 90 real warships waited in silence. Their crews had trained for this moment for weeks. Every captain knew the plan. Every gunner had practiced their targeting. Every pilot had flown the attack pattern in simulators until they could do it blind. The plan was called Crazy Ivan, named after an old submarine tactic from Earth's history. Let the enemy see what they expected to see, then hit them from the side when they were not looking. It was simple, brutal, and very human. The Council fleet advanced slowly, maintaining perfect formation. When they reached weapons range of the first defensive shell, they opened fire. Energy beams lanced across space, striking the human vessels. Several exploded immediately, their hulls rupturing from the impacts. Corvin smiled. This was going exactly as planned. Then Velrix looked up from his sensors with horror on his face. He reported power signatures erupting from the asteroid belt. Dozens of them, scores. The contacts they had been tracking were decoys. The real human fleet was coming from the side, accelerating at full power directly toward the Council formation. Corvin felt ice in his blood. He screamed orders for evasive maneuvers and defensive formations, but there was no time. The human fleet had closed to less than 1,000 kilometers before being detected. At that range in space combat, they were practically touching. The human fleet opened fire all at once. It was not a careful, measured attack. It was a storm of violence. Railgun slugs tore through Council ships like paper. Nuclear missiles overwhelmed point defenses through sheer numbers. And then came something new, something the humans had built specifically for this battle. Several human destroyers launched strange projectiles that looked wrong somehow, like they were flickering in and out of reality. They were captured faster than light drives rigged to fail, packed with antimatter from Earth's research laboratories. The devices jumped into faster-than-light travel for less than a second, appearing inside the space occupied by Council ships, then exploded as the drives tore themselves apart. 3 Council super dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, consumed by explosions that registered as miniature suns. The shockwaves damaged a dozen nearby vessels. Alarm screamed across the entire fleet. Corvin's perfect formation disintegrated into chaos. Stone gave her next order with cold precision. All human ships were to close to what she called knife-fighting range. Get so close that the Council's advantages in sensors and weapons meant nothing. Turn the battle into a brawl where determination and armor mattered more than technology. Captain Eric Hall commanded the destroyer Relentless. His ship had been damaged in the first battle and barely repaired in time for this one. Half his systems were held together with improvisation and prayer. But his crew was ready. When Stone gave the order to close, Hall drove his ship straight into the Council formation without hesitation. The Relentless fired everything she had. Her railguns glowed red from continuous operation. Her missile tubes launched their entire payload in one massive barrage. When a Council destroyer moved to block her path, Hall did not turn away. He ordered his crew to brace for impact and drove his ship directly into the alien vessel. Both ships crumpled from the collision. Metal screamed and tore. The Council destroyer's elegant structure collapsed immediately, unable to withstand such brutal force. The Relentless held together longer, her redundant human armor absorbing the impact. It gave Hall's crew just enough time to evacuate to life pods. Hall stayed on the bridge alone, watching his crew escape. When the last pod launched, he triggered the self-destruct. The nuclear explosion consumed both ships and damaged 2 more Council vessels nearby. Hall died knowing he had done his duty. Similar scenes played out across the battlefield. Human ships, damaged beyond any hope of survival, did not retreat. They charged forward, ramming enemy vessels or positioning themselves for maximum damage when they self-destructed. Human crews fought on with broken bodies and dying ships because surrender was simply not something they considered. Lieutenant Jake Cooper led his fighter squadron through the chaos. His 12 fighters moved like angry hornets, too small and fast for the big ship weapons to track. They dove through gaps in Council formations, launching missiles at vulnerable spots, then vanishing before return fire could hit them. Jake flew so close to one alien cruiser that he could see the aliens through the viewports, their faces showing terror as his missiles struck home. The battle raged for 6 brutal hours. The Council fleet had more ships, better technology, and superior coordination, but none of that mattered against enemies who refused to follow the rules. Human tactics made no sense to species who fought clean, civilized wars. Humans did not worry about collateral damage or their own casualties. They just kept coming, wave after wave, trading their lives for enemy ships with cold calculation. Lieutenant Commander Paul Davis found himself on a crippled ship with 30 survivors. Their vessel was nothing but wreckage, drifting through the combat zone. A damaged Council battleship floated nearby, trying to make emergency repairs. Paul looked at his people. They were wounded, low on air, and had no chance of rescue until the battle ended. He gave them a choice. They could wait and maybe survive, or they could take the fight to the enemy one last time. Every person voted to fight. They put on armored suits, grabbed weapons, and used their suit thrusters to fly across the gap to the alien ship. The aliens never expected a boarding action. Council species did not fight hand-to-hand. Paul and his team found a breach in the hull and climbed inside. They moved through corridors with the fluid grace of predators, their movements practiced from years of training. The alien crew tried to stop them, but they were taller, weaker, and had never experienced close combat. Paul led his team to the engine room and planted nuclear charges. The aliens finally organized a defense, and a firefight erupted in the narrow spaces. Paul took hits to his armor. His people fell one by one, but they held long enough to arm the charges and lock the detonators. Paul tried to lead his survivors out, but the aliens had sealed the exits. He could set the charges on a timer and give the aliens a chance to evacuate, or he could trigger them immediately and make sure the job was done. He looked at his remaining team members. They nodded. They had known this might happen when they left their own ship. Paul triggered the charges manually. The battleship exploded, killing him, his team, and 300 aliens. But the mission was complete. As the hours passed, both fleets bled. The Council ships used their superior weapons to destroy human vessels one by one, but each human ship took multiple aliens with it. The exchange rate was terrible for the Council. They were trading 3 ships for every human vessel destroyed. At that rate, they would win the battle but lose the war. Corvin watched his fleet falling apart and finally understood what they were fighting. These humans were not primitive. They were warriors from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years. They had evolved in constant danger, learning to fight or die. War was not something they studied in books. It was in their bones, their blood, their very souls. His tactical officer reported that they had destroyed 70 human ships. The news of the Council's defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Traders carried the story to distant worlds. Merchants whispered it in spaceports. Independent species who had never bowed to the Council celebrated openly, and client species who had served the Council for generations began to ask dangerous questions. If one species could resist the Council and win, why could they not do the same? On Centralis, the Council chamber was in chaos. High Arbiter Zenith tried to maintain order, but the member species were panicking. For thousands of years, their power had been absolute. Now that power was crumbling. 3 separate client species had already declared independence, citing the Treaty of Earth as their inspiration. More would follow. Some Council members still wanted war. They argued for building an even larger fleet and destroying Earth completely, no matter the cost. But others were more practical. Fleet Admiral Corvin had returned with barely a third of his ships intact. Building another fleet that size would take years and drain the Council's resources. And there was no guarantee it would work. The humans had proven they could fight, and they were getting better at it every day. More importantly, continuing the war was no longer economically viable. Human raiders were destroying Council infrastructure faster than it could be rebuilt. Trade routes were disrupted. Mining operations were suspended. Manufacturing plants were operating at half capacity. The war was costing more than the Council could afford. A smaller faction, led by Councillor Vex, argued for something that had not been done in Council history. They should negotiate, accept that humanity would remain independent and find a way to coexist. It was humiliating, but it was also practical. The alternative was a war that could drag on for decades and potentially destroy the Council entirely. After weeks of debate, pragmatism won. The Council authorized a diplomatic mission to Earth under a flag of truce. Ambassador Kira was chosen to lead the delegation. She was from a species known for their negotiation skills, small and delicate with features designed to evoke sympathy and trust. She had resolved 3 major disputes in her career without a single shot being fired. But she had never negotiated with Deathworlders before. President Linda Hayes received the diplomatic request and agreed to a meeting. She chose the same conference room where Commander Velrax had delivered his ultimatum over a year ago. The symbolism was not subtle. Beside Hayes sat Admiral Stone, General Webb, and representatives from every major nation on Earth. The humans were united in a way they had never been before the war. Ambassador Kira arrived with a small delegation and no weapons. She was nervous, though she tried to hide it. The humans looked dangerous even sitting still. They moved with a controlled power that suggested violence was always just beneath the surface. Their eyes were hard and calculating. These were not people who forgave easily. Kira began with the standard diplomatic pleasantries, acknowledging that the Council's initial approach had been flawed. She expressed regret for the loss of life on both sides. She proposed a negotiated settlement where humanity would be recognized as independent in exchange for ceasing their raids on Council territory. President Hayes let the silence stretch uncomfortably long. Then she spoke in a voice as cold as space. She pointed out that the Council had come to Earth demanding surrender. They had attacked when humanity refused. They had killed hundreds of thousands, and now they wanted peace only because they were losing. General Webb leaned forward and asked why humanity should trust any agreement with the Council. They had proven they could not be trusted. They had said they came in peace but brought threats. They had called themselves civilized but attempted genocide. What was to stop them from building another fleet in 10 years and trying again? Kira felt the negotiation slipping away. She tried to appeal to reason. The war benefited no one. Both sides had suffered terrible losses. Continued fighting would only lead to more death. Surely peace was preferable to endless conflict. Admiral Stone smiled, but there was no warmth in it. She asked if the Council could survive a long war. Human raiders were destroying their infrastructure daily. Client species were rebelling. Trade was disrupted. How long before the Council's economy collapsed? How long before their client species all demanded independence? The Council needed peace more than humanity did. Kira realized she was not negotiating from a position of strength. The humans knew it too. They were going to extract every advantage they could. Over the next 6 weeks, diplomats from both sides hammered out what became known as the Treaty of Earth. The negotiations were brutal. The Council wanted humanity to stop their raids and remain in their own territory. Humanity wanted guarantees that the Council would never threaten them again, and demanded the right to help other species seek independence. The final treaty was revolutionary. Humanity was recognized as fully sovereign with no restrictions whatsoever. The Sol system and a buffer zone of 10 light-years in all directions was declared human space, where Council ships could only enter with permission. All client species of the Council would be offered the choice to remain under Council authority or seek independence. Humanity could provide military assistance to any species choosing independence. The Council would establish clear protocols for first contact with new species, prohibiting any form of coercion or threats. And most importantly, humanity retained its military and the right to defend itself and its allies without limitation. The Council had come to conquer Earth. They left having surrendered, more political power than they had lost in the previous 1,000 years. But the alternative was a war they could not win, so they signed. President Hayes and High Arbiter Zenith signed the treaty in a ceremony broadcast across both human and Council space. Hayes kept her remarks brief. She said that humanity had never wanted war, but when threatened, they had shown what they were capable of. She hoped this treaty would lead to lasting peace and cooperation, but if the Council ever threatened humanity again, Earth's children would remind them of this lesson. Zenith's remarks were even shorter. He acknowledged humanity's sovereignty and expressed hope for a peaceful future. He did not mention the war, the defeats, or the humiliation. He simply wanted the entire affair to be over. In the months following the treaty, 17 client species declared independence, using the Treaty of Earth as their legal framework. Humanity offered military protection where needed, but carefully avoided trying to build an empire. They had fought for freedom, not to replace one tyrant with another. The human military expanded rapidly. Lessons from the war were incorporated into new ship designs, training programs, and tactical doctrine. Admiral Stone, promoted to Fleet Admiral, oversaw the construction of 50 new warships combining human and alien technology. Future generations would be even better prepared. Dr. Helen Price received the Nobel Prize for her work, adapting alien technology. In her acceptance speech, she talked about how Earth's harsh environment had forced humanity to be innovative and resourceful. Those qualities had saved them during the war and would serve them well as they explored the galaxy. Commander Nick Perry, promoted to colonel, trained the next generation of special operations soldiers. His raiders had become legendary across the galaxy. Young soldiers competed for the chance to join his elite teams. He told every new recruit the same thing. Winning was not about having the best weapons or the biggest fleet. It was about being willing to do whatever was necessary, to sacrifice everything, and to never surrender even when defeat seemed certain. 5 years after the war ended, humanity launched their first deep space exploration missions beyond Council space. Commodore Jake Morrison commanded the UN Defiance on a mission to find new worlds and new species. His orders were to explore, make peaceful contact, and offer friendship and trade. But his ship was also heavily armed and his crew was trained for combat. Humanity had learned from the Council's mistake. They approached the galaxy with open hands, but those hands were strong enough to defend themselves if necessary. As Morrison's ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving Earth behind, he thought about how much had changed. Humanity had gone from a single planet species to a recognized galactic power in just a few years. They had proven that technology and numbers were not everything. Courage, determination, and the will to fight could overcome any advantage. The Galactic Council had made the mistake of judging humanity by their primitive technology and assuming they would be easy to conquer. They had forgotten to account for what Earth itself had done to its children. A death world did not create weak species. It created survivors who knew how to fight, how to adapt, and how to win against impossible odds. Across the galaxy, species told stories about the Deathworlders from Earth. Parents told their children about the humans who refused to surrender even when faced with annihilation. Military academies studied human tactics and tried to understand how they had defeated superior forces. Diplomats used the Treaty of Earth as a model for fair negotiations between unequal powers. The Galactic Council survived, but it was forever changed. They could no longer rule through intimidation and superior force. They had to negotiate, compromise, and respect the sovereignty of other species. Some council members resented this. Others grudgingly admitted it was better this way.